Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Lucie. It's so good to have you on today.
Hello. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
This is so exciting. So, for those of you who are joining, thank you. My name is Katherine D. Graham. I'm a fantasy author and full-time editor, and I'm here today with a special guest for our Indie Author Behind the Scenes series, and this is Lucie Ataya. I hope I pronounced your last name right.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, Lucie is a full-time editor as well, right? And a
Yeah.
author and also a blogger and
hmm
very active in the community. One of the co-founders of the Indie Writer uh, Collective, and just puts out a bunch of resources together with other authors to help aspiring authors, whether you're going indie or hybrid. There's great information, and I put all of Lucie's links in the description box. So go down and follow her on her Instagram and check out her website. But today, Lucie is joining me to talk about how to find balance between work, in this case, work being writing and editing, and life outside of the written world, to the real world, I guess.
Yes, the real world.
So, Lucie, before we get started, why don't you just tell everybody who's watching a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the writing and editing and all of that as your full time?
Yeah. So I've always been a writer at heart. I've always been writing. Actually, I can't remember a time when I wasn't writing. But it's only a few years ago that I decided to take it a bit further and actually publish a book. Um, my first book came out in 2020, and I was completely unprepared for that. I published my book without telling anyone that it was there. I literally put it on Amazon KDP and then told a bunch of people that it was there, and no one knew I was writing. No one had a clue. Most people were, sort of impressed and sort of taken aback that that had happened. And I learned about writing properly, and marketing your own book, promoting your own book only after my first book was out. And all of that was a rush of excitement, getting into the bookstagram community, meeting new authors, amazing people like you, Catherine, who are really cool and supportive. And I kind of got sucked into the whirlwind of that, like finding this new whole world that I'd never knew, known existed. I was writing in silo by myself, with no one to share in my, excitements and moments of despair. And so the first year was really thrilling, really exciting, collaborating with authors, doing a lot on social media. And last year, I took it a step further with offering professional beta reading, professional editing services, and I've really enjoyed doing that. Like it's really plunged me at the heart of the stuff I like to do, which is writing, which is working with writers to make
Mm-hmm.
their work shine. Um, but there's a but. There's always a but. Why I love that you reached out to me to talk about this very topic, Catherine, is that I hit a bit of a point at the middle of last year where I ran out of steam and life threw some really intense stuff my way in my personal life, and I everything went out of balance. And I've really struggled with finding, that mysterious magical balance that I'm sure exists somewhere, but it's really it's really affected me.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And uh, for those of you who are watching, this book over here, No Pain, No Gain, is Lucie's. And I love the title because I saw your title again. I was like, that works perfect for this live, by the
I know, right?
way. Yes. Oh, hi, Luna. Good to have you on. Yeah, if you're watching and you have questions, please drop them in the chat. There's a little bit of a delay, but we will get them and we will answer them. I've got some from before the chat that are mostly for
Mhm.
Lucie. So I will ask you those, and then we can just talk through some points and answer any other questions that come up on the
Mhm.
live. But one of them I think you just answered was, how long have you been editing? Were you an editor before you were a writer?
So I wasn't officially an editor. I've been working with fellow authors and writers before I took it on the professional side. I did it because, you know, we do each other favors, and then you meet people that you like, and you know, they ask you to check their work. And um, I found that when I was beta reading, or when I was reading another writer's work, and all they were asking me for was just a second opinion, I couldn't help but also correct things and add annotations. And so that, for me, that's where it started. And as I was doing it more, I was like, actually, I really enjoy doing this. Let me see if I can make a living out of it. So that's how it started. A bit out of nowhere, and then it formalized into something else.
Yeah. And Lucie does offer those services on her website, which should be at the link in the description too.
Hmm.
If you're watching on Facebook, I will try to find that link and drop it in the comments too. So, Lucie, the next question was, after launch week, my book
Hmm.
went flat and I felt discouraged. Did you have the same experience? And I'm guessing this is for their first book.
So because my experience was, to give you a bit of context, I I published my first book less because I wanted to be an author and I wanted the book to be a success. I published my first book because I was so terrified of putting my work out there. The fact that I pressed published on Amazon was the victory. That was, for me, like, that was the reason why I did it, because I terrified of failing. I was terrified of being called a fraud, of my book being terrible and everyone hating it. That the act of putting the work out there was my victory at the time. And then it turns out no one really cares, and people aren't nearly as mean as I thought they were, in my mind. But so the week after that, it was sort of flat because I hadn't really told anyone it was there. But I did find a plateau when I started promoting it. There's a bit of an uptake at the beginning, and then it kind of plateaus. And I've found that it's completely proportionate to the amount of effort I put in connecting with other people. It's not even doing ads or doing promotion to random strangers. For me personally, as an indie author, it's all been about the connections I made. So talking to um, actual people on Bookstagram, making genuine connections, getting interested in other people, and then they get interested back in what you do, and then that gives them an incentive to look at your work and buy your book, without you ever having to say, go and buy my book. They buy it because they get to know you and they like you. And I think that's sort of the key as an indie author, especially at the beginning. Is it's the best piece of advice I've received in this community, which I had quite early on, was when you're an indie author, or a small business, actually, which indie authors are, it's less about why people should buy your book. It's why they should get it from you. So it's all about you. It's all about getting people a glimpse into who you are as a person. And once they connect with you, they want to support you, and they want to read your book. So when I plateaued in my efforts with that, then I noticed the sales plateauing as well.
Um, that's great. Yeah, I feel like you said you're selling yourself, especially as an indie
Hmm.
author. You don't have a big press, and they're like, "Oh, I'm willing to take a chance because one of the big five published this person." So it's
Hmm.
really about establishing a connection with the readers.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so shifting sort of into the work-life balance aspect is, how did you find time to write and publish while working another full-time job? I don't know if you were working another full-time job or not. So,
I was. So I've been on a mission to, again, find the right balance. So I went from working a full-time job on the side to working a part-time job on the side to changing my hours with my job to kind of, leave room for more writing. Um, and I think that how I found the time is I made the time. Because there is time. There's, even when you work a full-time job, maybe there's less time because a lot of your time is spent working. But um, I made the time after work. I made the time on the weekends, and I made that time enjoyable. I made a ritual out of sitting down and writing. So, on a weekend, I would make a ritual. I like writing in coffee places or busy places because the white noise really helps me focus. So I would make a ritual out of taking my backpack, going for a walk, finding a coffee shop that I like, sitting down, setting myself up, and then being there for a few hours. In the evenings, again, I would make a ritual out of not switching on the TV because that's where time gets sucked. But I make a ritual out of finding a playlist that I like, putting the lighting that I enjoy, maybe lighting a candle or two, making myself a cup of tea, and then setting myself up. So how I found the time is how I made the time. I made the time. And when I'm not writing, it's always because I'm not making the time for it in one way or other.
Yeah, I totally agree. Starting out back when I was working another corporate job to pay the bills, writing was done in time that I carved out by not doing
Hmm.
something else. Like you said, yours
Hmm.
is TV, and for me, it was I'm just going to sacrifice my Skyrim
Hmm.
time. When the boys go to bed, I'm not going to play
Hmm.
Skyrim. I'm going to write. But I'm also sort of a binge writer. I don't know about you, Lucy. I tend to go, okay, NaNoWriMo is my writing month. I don't do
Hmm.
a lot of my own editing. I edit for work, but I don't edit my own stuff during November. It's mostly for drafting. And then the rest of the year, I
Hmm.
feel like I can take it easier. So there's a
Hmm.
couple different approaches. You can say, okay, I know, and my family knows, and everybody knows Catherine's dead to the world in November because she's going to be writing. Or you can make, like you said, a really fun ritual out of it and just say every day, I'm going to do this, or every Saturday, or whatever it is. Here is that
Hmm.
time that I'm going to set out. And I love that.
Yeah, and it's like I used to think that, oh my God, if I don't have 3 hours in front of me, I can't write. What's the point in writing if I don't have hours?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I used to do so when I was commuting into work, I used to write on the tube, and actually, that was quite a prolific writing time because I knew I only had like 30 minutes on my journey. So I wanted to cram. I was writing like crazy. I wanted to cram as much in those 30 minutes. So I used to write like an hour a day, like in 30-minute installments, because I had this really like carved out time where I literally had nowhere to go but be there. And that started switching something in my brain. And then every time I got in the tube, like my mind got into focus. So I think for me, it was also about, yes, like I make a ritual out of it whenever I can, when I have the time to do that. But I have had to get past this block of, if I don't have hours, like even if 1 hour is a lot, can be a lot of time. If I don't have a certain amount of time, I can't write. That's not necessarily the case. You can make it, we can make the best out of 20 minutes. You can make the best out of 10 minutes. I find, and being on public transport, for me always works now because I'm like, oh, I have 10 minutes. Let me open up my work in progress and put 10 minutes worth of words and see how far I can get.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. If it comes down to it and you look at your writing as part time
Hmm.
and you're going to try to find 20 hours here and there, it's a whole lot easier to find 30-minute chunks or 1 hour chunks than it is to find, a 5 hour chunk.
Yeah.
um, but there's so much
Yeah.
more to writing than drafting. And I think, this hits for the newer authors who are figuring out time to draft work. But once you're done drafting, you enter the world of the cycle, which is you have something
Hmm.
in editing, you have something you're marketing, you have something you're
Hmm.
drafting. And that's
Yeah.
when it gets into this loop, and it's like, how do I balance all of these different aspects? Um,
Hmm.
Social media being a huge time but a necessary for marketing, especially if you're indie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a set amount of time that you're like, this is how much time I'm going to spend on social media, or does it vary by week?
So that's an excellent question. So in the last few months, because I've had a major upheaval in my personal life, um, I've really struggled with social media. I could, I know the theory of it because in my day job, I work in online marketing and digital advertising. So I can give you a full checklist and template of what you should do if you want to be successful on social media. But I've really struggled with that lately. And before that, I would um, um, kind of give me 10 minutes increments during the day where I'm like, okay, I'll spend 10 minutes there, either answer some comments or I'll post some stories, or, making it kind of time box, because in the past, you get started and you get sucked in, and then before you know it, like an hour and a half has passed and you're on social media and you haven't really done anything of consequence. Um, so I used to try and give me 10 minutes here and there throughout the day, and actually time it, like put a timer on my phone. At the end of 10 minutes, you're off Instagram. But lately, I've really struggled with that. Being on social media and presenting, you know, a front when so much was going on in my life, and I was really struggling, just didn't feel right. And I never want to come across as someone who's fake. I don't, I never encourage people to try and look fake or pretend on social media. But for a while, I never really had anything super inspiring to say. And I do a lot of processing, like in silence. So yes, recently I haven't been on social media much. So to answer your question, I have allocated 0 minutes a day to being on social media. I'm slowly getting back to it now, but a good piece of advice that I've received, which I've used in the past, is time it. Every day, like at maybe 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m., whatever works with your schedule. Set 10 minutes and do something productive. Answer every comment that someone puts for you. Reach out to an author. Answer your messages. Build connections and build that network. Um, so yeah.
That's great advice. Yeah, I've
Oh,
heard
thanks.
so many different pieces of advice, and if you're watching and you've been in the writing industry long, chances are you have too. And I don't think there's necessarily a straight answer, but I do agree
Mm-hmm.
with Lucy that I have to put some kind of timer on
Mm-hmm.
social media because there's different aspects. There's social media for your promotion and the content of your own stuff. That's the easy part for me because I can just take an afternoon, like on Saturday, and use the pre-scheduler. Like Instagram and Facebook
Mm-hmm.
have the creator studio and it's free, and you just basically schedule all your content out. So then during the week, you're just replying. So there's 10 minutes a day as I'm replying to comments and I'm interacting with the other authors and readers that I want to stay connected with. But that 10
Mm-hmm.
minutes can turn into 30 minutes, like you said. And so saying, okay, this is my dedicated 10 minutes for Instagram, and then later I have my 10 minutes for Facebook, and then later your
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes for Twitter is helpful. But my mentor also said, and I don't know, Lucy, I'm curious to hear what you think about this. She's like, you don't have to be on all platforms. You only have to be on the main ones your readers are on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always advocate. So I'm only on Instagram. And I would definitely second that. It's better, especially if you feel a little overwhelmed with social media and promotion in general. Focus on one platform and do it well before you expand to others, or before you have time and capacity to expand to others. And I find that actually Instagram is really good for finding readers. Amongst the author community, amongst the Bookstagram community, the book reviewer community, and so on. I found it a really, really good place to find people and spread the word. So I definitely agree with that. If if you have the capacity, the knowledge, the time, if you enjoy social media management, which in itself is an actual job, then having a wider spread across multiple platforms is great. But I'd say start small, niche down at first, and then expand as you feel more comfortable. Um, but I'd also add, and it's something that I've really worked on in the last year or so, in the last few months, especially having so much going on in my life, is I talk right now about the theory of setting a timer for 10 minutes and answering DMs and answering comments, but I've had a lot of time in recent months where I couldn't face it. Like I would see the number of comments rise on my Instagram. I would see the number of DMs rise, and it would make me physically sick. Like it would make me overwhelmed because I just couldn't deal with any more than what's going on for
Mm,
me. So one thing that I've learned to do and I've really worked on is to also give myself some grace, you know. At the end of the day, the people who matter, they'll understand if you need the space. If you don't get to post on Instagram one day, it's fine. It really is. If you don't post for a week,
yeah.
for a month, for 2 months, that's absolutely fine. Your book will be fine because to promote yourself, to build connections, to promote your book, you need to have the energy to give. You know, you need to be there, and have that juice in you to spread the love. Um, but if you're empty and if you're not believing in it, then you have very little to give. And that's when platforms like Instagram, who are built on the principles of addiction, they're there to get you sucked in, to play on your sense of self-worth, your sense of FOMO, your sense of not being able to do well enough on seeing others doing like or seemingly striving, and making you feel like you're not good enough or you're not successful enough. If you're on that headspace, then it can get you to really dark places, I find. So above all, finding a balance is also giving yourself grace when it's not happening, and that's okay. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that knowing when to pull back for
Yes.
yourself and what's going on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that plays into actually strengthening your connection with your readers as being genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
somebody who's constantly happy, life is always good, blah, 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 that sounds nice for a while, but if you're like an active follower of that person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, well, what's really going on in this person's life. And it's not
Yeah.
like we're open books, pardon the pun, but,
I love
you
it.
know,
I love it.
still to say, I'm sorry, guys, I'm going through some stuff right now and I don't feel like writing today. It
Mm-hmm.
shows I care about you as readers, but I'm also a real person and I've got my
Mm-hmm.
struggles just like you do. So then
Yeah.
they're not just supporting the author who's always doing well, they're supporting the author who's a real person. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And you'd be surprised how much people relate to that, even people who don't write. Because those struggles, those moments of feeling really low, those moments of not being able to deal, anyone who's not a writer can relate to that. And that, like you said, I completely agree, that strengthened that connection. At first I wasn't really comfortable talking about what I was going through, and then some of the people that I built slightly stronger connections to, I mentioned it to them, like I pinged them a message, saying, no, I'm not on here a lot, but I'm going through some things, and they've been incredibly supportive, and that's really actually really helped getting me back into social media slowly, because it becomes a place of positive connections, and people are, you think people might react certain ways to you not being on top of things, but actually people who care will just want you to do well and be happy and be okay, and they'll support your
Hmm.
choices that way.
So we got a good question, and I see other people on, so feel free to
Oh,
drop your questions, and I'll call them to Lucy. So the question is, do you use a PA, or would you consider using a PA to do some of the stuff like that?
oh my God, I would love a PA. If I could afford it, I definitely would. I would love someone to help handle a lot of the logistics behind being a writer. So a lot of the promotions, planning content, so that I can focus on the things that actually give me joy, which is writing and connecting with people. So
Hmm.
yes, if I could, I definitely would. That would take away a lot of the pressure of having to perform on all
Yeah,
these different levels. Yeah.
yeah. So PA being a personal assistant for those who are
Hmm.
newer or just getting into writing.
Hmm.
People who can do different things depending on what you contract them for, from replying to
Hmm.
comments for you, dealing with the creepers for you so you don't ever see
Yeah.
their messages,
Hmm.
um, taking the content you've created, like a calendar, and making sure that it gets posted on time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's so many different types of personal assistants, but while they're definitely worth every penny, they are expensive.
Yeah.
When you have books and you're starting out, most of the time you have no income for your first 1 to 3 books. It's
Hmm.
like, I haven't even made even yet on the first book, and I don't think people really usually, unless you hit like lightning, hit your
Exactly.
money back in the first book is very
Mm.
rare for most authors I've spoken to. So it's like these people are worth $12.50, $15, $17 an hour, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
pay that from somewhere. So most of us are
Yeah.
funding our own books, and we're funding them with our day jobs. And so yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I think the idea of a personal assistant is great, but I'm also diverting my resources into,
Mm-hmm.
getting professional edits and covers and
Yeah.
stuff. So that's not on here right now. But if you're doing it, there are definitely reputable personal assistants. Um, Research them, ask for references, and all of that before you get started with them.
But I would
And
also say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
Because I've pondered this, when I was at the time where I was like, I can't deal with all this. This is too much, and I'm actually not writing because I'm focusing on all these 20 different things that I have to do. Um, I've also thought of, finding a social media intern, or like um exchanging things with other professionals. So you do my social media for a month and I edit your book for free, or something like that. There's a lot of trade-offs that you can do as well.
Yeah.
I know if you pay for something that's, like certain contract in place, and it sets, the tone for a lot of things. But I'm also one to be like, okay, I can't do this right now. What's the next best thing? Like, um looking at marketing courses and trying to reach out to students who, um, maybe might be less expensive, and might want to kind of build their portfolio, and you can have that for a month at a time or something like that. Or again, finding other authors or professionals who might benefit from something you have to offer, in exchange for taking on your account for, a certain set amount of time. So I think there's always ways around things. But um, getting a proper PA, I did look into that at one point, and it's expensive, and you have to make calls on, do I want a book professionally edited in a cover that looks cool, or do I want someone to respond to my DMs? Like, it's hard to make the call.
Money balance. Yeah, if you're
I
watching and you're
know.
interested on the money, I have another live coming up in a couple weeks. Is how much does it really cost to self-publish a book?
Mm,
And it goes through like the three main ways you can self-publish a book and the different roundabout costs. So you can subscribe to my
mhm,
channel if you're interested in that. But so we've had some really good points. We've had you can make the time to write,
mhm,
but that requires the sacrifice of something else. For Lucie, it was TV. For me, it's video games. You don't have to sit down in big, huge chunks to write, which I love.
mhm,
If you've got 30 minutes, that 30 minutes adds up over the course of a week. If you do it twice a day, that's an hour a day. That's 7 hours a week. And
mhm.
during NaNoWriMo, I think they said most writers write 600, 700 words. So at the end of a week, you've got a few thousand words, and that's
Yeah.
a chapter, two chapters. So that's great. And um, then social media being the big time suck for a lot of authors is timing how much you want to spend on there, and like Lucie said, not overdoing your platforms, picking your central platform and building that up, and then expanding slowly is a good tip for that. And if you found yourself where right now you're in book talk and you're in Instagram and you're in Twitter and you're in Facebook, maybe you need to scale down on all
Mhm.
but one or two of your main ones and then rebuild back up once you know your audience, you know it's working. Because readers, we're all readers too, most of us.
Mhm.
And nobody wants to hear just about somebody's book every single time they go to their page. We're looking for authenticity and connection most
Mm.
of the time. So, even like Sarah J. Maas and the other famous authors, you go to their Instagram, and yeah, they've got some stuff on their book, but then it's side stuff about their characters, about what inspired this, or a song, or something else. So, don't feel bad to take a step back and say, okay, how do I connect beyond just showing, here's my book, and it's still 99 cents, which is what it was
Mhm.
yesterday. Um, yeah, and so then the PA. I don't want to keep us too far over time, but we did get one last question that looks really good in case any are
Mhm.
still pending. So if you guys are watching and you have more, um, drop them in,
Mm-hmm.
but it is, should I write, edit, and release books one book at a time, or should I have more than one in the works?
Oh, that's a good question. So I personally always have more than one book in the works, but they're all at different stages because when I get stuck on my editing, I take my mind off being stuck by working on something else. Um, but what I find is that if you do have multiple works in progress at the same time, the time it you dedicate to writing, that needs to be focused on one. So, okay, today I'm working on that. Tomorrow I'm working on the second one. Day after on the third, and so on. So it's more about for me again. It's more about making sure that the time you spend with one of your books, any one of your books, you dedicate to that and you focus on that. And for me, it makes it easier because I'm rarely writing multiple books at a time. It's mostly when I get into editing of a book, um, take my mind off that by writing something else. When I get into sending a book to beta readers, then I have more time to go back to writing. So because they're all at different stages, it's easier to compartmentalize. But you have to make sure that the quality of the focus that you give any given book is there, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I learned this the hard way over the last few months. Is trying to actually draft more than one book at one time has been a nightmare, and I would not recommend it to somebody I disliked. But having
Saying quite a lot.
one that you're drafting, one that's being edited, one or more that you're marketing is more manageable, because then it's like, okay, Monday is the day where I post all my content for the week. And that's basically like my marketing focus day. And then Tuesday, I'm going to revise something on the one that's being edited. You can sort of schedule out, here's when you're going to do what, and then you stay in the voices of the people that you're drafting. And you don't do what I did and be like, oh, that line that she just said sounded like that character in the other book, and that did not sound like her. So let's go back and delete and start over. Yeah, there's so much to it. But ultimately, for those who are watching, especially newer authors who have not put out your book yet, there's something Lucie and I were talking about before we went live, which was just realizing that this is a long-term commitment. If you're writing just to put one story out and you're done, then that's a little different. But a lot of authors, I feel like, go down after the first book comes out because you don't realize this isn't a finish line waiting for you, and the book comes out and then all the work's over and you can breathe. It actually gets harder because now you've added marketing in on top of the others. And I don't say that to be discouraging, just to say, don't go in saying there's the finish line. Instead, be like, that's the first baton of a marathon. You're taking that baton, you're trading it to somebody else, you're starting over, you're drafting something new, you're editing something new, you're marketing more and more things, and it's just going to add. So be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I completely second that. And that's been my, kind of guiding line over the last year is I went all in when I was promoting the first book. I put so much effort. I was on Instagram all the time. I was on top of everything and more. And then I started working on my second book, and I had a massive moment of realization of I cannot sustain this over book 2 and 3 and 4. I'm never going to be able to make it. So you have to find a level of effort that's sustainable, that you can do it in the long run and still enjoy it. Because the moment you stop enjoying it is when your mind and your body will find ways of keeping you away from writing. They'll be like, dude, we're not supporting that. So yeah, be
Yeah.
kind. Be kind to yourself is generally a good way to go, I find.
Yeah. If you would show other authors the same level of, oh, it's okay that you had to push that back, don't worry about it, you should be willing to show yourself the same
Yeah.
level of respect.
Yeah.
Manageable expectations, and we try to meet the deadlines and all of that too, but we're in control of when those fall, thankfully, being indie. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Oh, and Melissa's on. Andrew says, so true. Yeah. um, so thank you so much, Lucie. Your advice has been fantastic, and I know so many of us in the community look up to you and like you said, we totally understand why you've been off social media, but it's been an honor to actually get to talk live with you after
Thank
so
you.
long.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really, really glad. I'm getting back into social media, but this is a perfect way for me to get back into it, especially talking about a topic like that and with you. So, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. So, again, for those who have come in since we started, all of Lucie's links are in the description. You can check out her book, No Pain, No Game, her editing services, and just general writing advice. She has free resources on her website, which have been really helpful. I started using them before my debut novel came out, and I really appreciated what you did putting them together. And this series is continuing, Indie Author Behind the Scenes. We're going to be sharing tools and tips with other guest authors over the coming months. So if you're an indie author or a hybrid author, feel free to subscribe. And I'm excited. Thank you so much again. Oh, hi,
Thank you.
puppy.
Yeah, yeah. He has FOMO as well. He wants to be part of it.
But
But
I
thank
hope that
you.
this year goes so much better, Lucie, for you, and
Me
that you
too.
have all the success with your books. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Catherine. Bye.
Bye.